All right, this is going to be a little tight, but this is the end of the generator right here. This end cap, I mean, they have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bolts. I don't think they need 8 bolts to hold that on. But anyway, so on this isn't, again, the crazy trailer that I was telling you about. Just about everything that was bad on this thing had to get visited. This end cap right here goes on like that. Okay, so when you take that off, that's what you're going to see right there. And there's only 2 bolts that hold this on right there and there. And I don't want to pull this out too much because this rubber thing up here on the top has some wires that come out of it. It's kind of a pain to feed that in. So I'm going to try to keep that together for this video. Anyway, inside here, this device right there, this one right here, that's the automatic voltage regulator, okay? And when we were having problems with the generator not being able to maintain the voltage, this is the first culprit. So I ordered a replacement automatic voltage regulator. The acronym is like an AVR. I ordered one, and it didn't really help anything. And in fact, gosh, I almost wonder if that AVR wasn't the right one or it was bad, because later, when I was doing some other work on the generator, the thing started smoking. I was like, oh my gosh. So I was able to send that back to the manufacturer. And then I put the original AVR back in, and everything seemed to be working at that point. So that was okay. When you take out the AVR, there's a bolt underneath and a bolt up top. The bolt underneath, this one down here, has a little, this thing right here. It just kind of helps to hold the wire out. You can see that little thing. It cradles it. That's this thing right here. And it just cradles that so that it doesn't get sucked into the stator, or into the turbine. You don't want that to get pulled in there and then chew the wiring up. When you take the AVR off, or the automatic voltage regulator, be really gentle and careful. This one's a little tricky because you got that little clamp on this side, and there's not a lot of room to work. And you don't want to put a lot of tension on the back side of this guy, because that is coming directly off of the stator. And you want to just be really careful in there if you're ever changing that. To continue the tour, up top, right here, this is the brush assembly. And interesting, there's 2 bolts, one here and one here. And if you notice, let's see if I can get in there, there's a little positive, a little plus on the top of that. I don't know if you can see it because it's just not very good. But anyway, it's like under the wire. Anyway, the positive, and then if you notice that from the AVR, one of the wires has that little tag on there, and that little tag is a positive sign. So it's important that you get the right wire onto the turbine, because it is polarity does matter. And then you can see how there's a positive and there's a negative. And then underneath the brush, if you take out those 2 screws right there, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get in underneath there, but it'd be great if I could. Yeah, right there. So you can see the turbine wheel. That copper, see that copper down inside there? That copper goes all the way around the turbine, or the rotor, and you can see how there's little streaks on it in there. Let's see if I can get it. Anyway, there's 2 of them. I don't know if I can get the other one. Oh, it's so hard. Anyway, there's 2 of them in there, and the brushes essentially sit onto that, and that's how the brushes, they rub as the turbine turns, and that's how the AVR controls the excitement of the stator. Now, in addition, down here at the bottom, now this is a 7,000 generator, and so the AVR is a lot simpler, but there is on the 11,000s, there's a lot more plugs coming off, and it was a little easier to swap out the AVR, and the AVR is even concaved or curved. It's not square like that. But down here on this wiring right here, 2 of those wires power the AVR, And the other two wires come in from the control panel that's up in the front so that it can monitor it. It's kind of like a monitoring wire. And then the AVR can monitor the output of the generator, both the voltage and the frequency, and then adjust how much power it is injecting onto the brushes. Now, this is going to be a little complicated, but I think it'd be worth just trying to talk it through. So some of you guys might gloss over with your head on this one, but there's two windings. Actually, there's like 3 windings on the stator. Okay, and the stator is this outside rim. You can see the wire right there on the stator. So the turbine or the rotor's in the middle. The stator's on the outside, and as the rotor turns the turbine, or the turbine turns the rotor, and then the brushes, the power that goes in up here, so the AVR outputs DC onto the, it outputs DC onto the brushes. And I think it was probably around, gosh, now I don't remember. It's like somewhere between 20 and 30 volts. And basically the higher the voltage that comes out of the AVR, it then excites the rest of the stator, and then that generates a higher voltage output. And then down here, you have power that comes in from another independent winding on the stator. So what was really one of the things that had happened on this generator is that the stator lost its magnetic field. Now, this is going to get really complicated, but there's a term called flashing the field. And you basically need to connect a car battery onto the road on up here. And when you connect a battery, it then injects 12 volts DC into the brushes, and then that can cause the magnetic field to come back. So what was happening with this generator, let me back up so I'm not in such an awkward spot. The generator was producing 4 volts output, 4 volts AC. So when I was hooking my voltmeter up to the control panel on this side, I'll just come around here. So right here, when I hooked my voltmeter in here, I was only getting 4 volts. It was so weird. It was like this low voltage AC output. And it took me a little while, and oh my gosh, it took me a long time to try to, because I had to research it. First, I thought it was the AVR, so that's why we swapped out the AVR. Then I thought, well, could it be the stator or the rotor's bad? That would have been really a bummer, because those things are like thousands of dollars to replace. And so after a great deal of research, that's when I learned about flashing. And flashing, every once in a while, you can have a situation where the generator loses the magnetic field in the stator or on the rotor. And when that occurs, then the generator can't produce the full 240 volts or the 120 volt output. And so in this particular case, the power, so that's the backside of the generator there, the power that was feeding into the AVR, which by the way is AC, I thought that was really interesting. So you have AC power that goes into the AVR to power it, and it outputs DC power onto the stator, and then the stator then generates AC. So it's like you're literally going from AC to DC to AC. I mean, it's crazy. But anyway, because the AVR was underpowered, I was only getting like 1 volt from the coil on the stator. And so for a period of time, I thought maybe, because there's independent windings. You've got the windings for leg 1, which does your 120 volts. Then you got another winding for leg 2, which is the other one. And so when you if you're doing 120 volt only on the generator, it basically is linking those 2 coils together. But if you're doing 240 volt, then you have an exact opposite phase of each other. And the third winding is for the AVR. And so the AVR was not getting enough power to put into the stator, and it was almost like a snowball effect. And so at one point, I even experimented with hooking up a external AC power source. In fact, I got like a transformer, something you would charge like an old phone with, the outputted AC, and that I was able to hook that up, and I was able to verify that I was able to power up the AVR. This guy right here is a voltage regulator. This guy is awesome. Oh yeah, look right there. You can see where I left him, about 22 volts. So you plug him in to AC, and then he will output a regulated AC voltage. And so you can go all the way down to 22 volts. And so I was using this to output 22 volts AC into the AVR that was in turn outputting somewhere in the 28 to 32 volts DC. And then that was able to cause the stator to remagnetize. It took me hours to be able to get that worked out, because it kept telling me, oh, you only need to do it for 5-10 seconds or, intermittently. And I was trying it, and it wasn't energizing. And I'd almost given up. I literally was getting ready to haul the trailer up to a generator repair place in Salt Lake, because I was just like, I can't do this anymore. It's like, it's too complicated. And that's when my last ditch effort, I hooked up that AC regulator, and bam, it came back to life. And then the generator started outputting a full 240 volts again. So I was like, woohoo! And what that verified that the stator and the turbine were fine. That, like, there wasn't a short or an issue with their windings. There was something else I wanted to tell you about this. When I connected a DC battery directly to the brushes. Now, you don't want to connect a DC battery to the brushes. You guys will all need to do some video and a deep dive on this. If anyone ever gets down to this video, my goodness, you got to be careful, and you got to do a lot of research on it, because you do something wrong, you can subsequently damage the stator or damage the rotor. But anyway, to magnetize it, you need to hook on a car battery for about 3 to 5 seconds, and you could do that a couple times in a row. Well, the problem is, if you leave the car battery connected too long, it would essentially just heat up the coil and then burn out the coil that you're trying to magnetize. And so that's a little tricky. But anyway, the reason I'm telling you all that is, while the generator was running, now anyone doing this, you got to be so careful, because you got live power going on in there, and the motor's turning, and it's noisy, and you got to be careful when you're working on generators. I generally would not recommend someone doing that unless they really know what they're doing or they feel very comfortable. But while the generator was running, I connected the 12-volt battery to the brushes. And when that was connected, the generator then started outputting about 60 volts. And that was the first clue to me that the coils are fine, the turbine was fine. It was just that it couldn't get enough magnetism to start the excitation process. And so that was the first big clue for me. But anyway, in order to test your stator, if for some reason you got weird stuff going on with your brushes, or your AVR's acting up, while the generator's running, if you connected a battery to the leads right here, this is, again, polarity matters. So you got to make sure you get the positive from the battery on the right, in this case it's the left side, and then the negative on the right. But just make sure you pay attention to what they were before you get in there and monkey around with it. But while that car battery was connected to this, the generator started outputting more power. So that was a win-win. Now, at one point, I was doing crazy. I was actually, because when I thought that the winding to power the AVR was bad, I was actually thinking, well, shoot, you know, I've got my cabinet right there. So I really could have the Sunny Islands inject an independent power source of about 22 volts AC to be able to power the AVR, and that totally would have worked. In fact, I actually had it hooked up and it was working. It's just that when the generator got under load, it needed more amps, and my automatic voltage regulator was incapable of generating that, and so it would just kind of like, oh, I can't do it anymore, and then it would just crap out. Anyway, wow, I've learned a lot about generators. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention. If you look right here, there's a big nest of wires right in there. Let me see if I can get in there a little bit better. See that right there? Okay, so that is the wires that are going to the independent coils on the stator for the windings. But notice that there is a white wire coming up over the top and connected to the ground right there. Okay. That is what you would call a bonded neutral, or a bonded ground. Let's see, no, it's if that white wire was not there, it would end up being what they would call a floating ground. Now, because we're on a trailer, sometimes you can get away with having a floating ground where the generator doesn't necessarily have a neutral going to ground. But generally speaking, it's better to have it be not a floating ground on a generator. So when the generator was acting up originally, I was thinking maybe there was some feedback going on back here in the ground, and that's what was causing it to run away, where the slave was causing power to go back into the generator. But anyway, there's that crazy long video. Man, I'm going to post a ton of videos today. So this was the crazy trailer of all time. Oh, one other thing, down in here on the brushes, that little copper thing in there. Man, I wonder if I can get the other one. Anyway, one was nice and shiny. It should look like a nice shiny penny. Like, I mean, just like because you've got the brushes in there constantly rubbing against it, right? Well, one side was not very pretty. Like, it was a little, kind of had some corrosion on it. So before I put the brushes on, I took a little bit of steel wool, just a little teeny bit of steel wool, or super fine sandpaper, like super fine. And I just put it on the end of a little stick. And then I just gently put it down. And again, you got to be so careful. As the generator was on and running and that turbine was spinning, I just barely put that up onto that, and it just kind of sanded off the corrosion to give the brushes a better contact as well. So yeah, like I'm telling you, this trailer was crazy. My gosh, I had so many things I had to fix on it. Okay, well, I hope all these videos help you guys. I'm going to have to go in and post them all. It's going to take me a while. I'll do it over lunch or something. All right, everyone. Have a good week, good year. I hope everyone's getting ready for the end of the world. Have your trailers up and going. Make sure they're all working real good, so you got electricity if you need it, if the grid goes down. Talk to everyone later. Bye.